Welcome back. It's another For Hauntsmen episode. I'm losing track of how many episodes we did so far this season, if we call it a season.
I think, yeah, we'll call it a season. That way, when we take a break, it seems intentional. This is episode 5, number 5.
Johnny 5 is alive.
Table 5.
We've got Paul on the line.
Hello.
But that was Joey talking.
I was singing the song.
Table 5. Table 5.
Table 5. Table 5.
And here I was thinking in my head, like, welcome back from Welcome Back, Connor, but I think that shows my age.
Goes too.
It always goes to Simpsons. Just FYI.
Yeah, fresh off the bat, too, before we even get into everything. There's Simpsons merchandise to support Halloween and horror type stuff in the Simpsons area at Universal Studios that we found last week.
Yeah, I saw that in your Cheap Seats video. I will be purchasing that when I arrive.
Excellent.
If they're still there.
If Joey hasn't bought them all to scalp them.
I got one. We were walking by, and even with my blindness, I was like, wait a minute. I recognize that outline. And as we got closer, boom, straight to the register.
Well, we skipped over the whole intro here, so in any event, welcome back. It's another Four Hauntsmen. You can cue the super fancy Four Horsemen galloping music now.
You already heard it. It's fine. You're not going to hear it again. Just kidding.
Before we get started with the meat of today's program, we want to tell you at least, stay tuned because we have a ticket giveaway for 2 pairs of tickets for Scream-a-geddon, which we will be talking about later in the podcast.
And we're going to make you wait for it. Like, we're not. It could be in 5 minutes. It could be in 15 minutes. It could be in 20 minutes. You don't know. So you just got to listen.
We're going to be those jerks.
Yes.
But before we get to Scream-a-geddon, let's talk about something that we, at least 2 out of the 3 of us, have done this past week. One of us multiple times, and at 2 different locations. We're talking about Howl-O-Scream.
Yes, sir. So I returned to Howl-O-Scream, 20 years of, or new era of terror, 20 years of fear. I don't know. They have a couple of different slogans this year. At Busch Gardens Williamsburg. And so if you guys remember from the last episode, first weekend, only the indoor stuff was open. So when the second weekend rolled around, I was like, I want to go just walk around and see the scare zones. And so I was able to do so, check out the new scare zones, Garden of the Souls and Fool's Court. As well as a couple of returning scare zones. And so it was cool to go back. I went Sunday night, and it was kind of funny because I pulled up to the ticket booth, and so just like any other amusement park, they have, I shouldn't say the parking, the parking booths, there's a row of parking booths that cars roll through, and I pulled up and there was no one there. And I was starting to worry, like, did I miss a message on Facebook? Like, did something happen? And, the parking attendant goes, just so you know, the park is yours tonight because no one else is here. Yesterday, cars were parked. Our parking lot was full. We had to go into the overflow lot. But tonight, there's no one here. And they were right. Like, I was able to park for free in what is normally the VIP parking lot, which was only about a third of the way full. I parked like 3 aisles from the main entrance. Now, it did get more crowded as the night rolled on and Howl-O-Scream actually began at 6. I rolled in around 3. But, I was able to check out the like I said, the scare zones. I wanted to see the opening scaremonies where Jack, the Howl-O-Scream icon, not the Halloween Horror Nights icon, comes out and unleashes the scare actors onto the park and the houses, and it's a short show, but for me, it's just little things like that I really appreciate. It's not a big flashy show, but it's something that genuinely feels like they put forth an effort to transition the park from daytime to nighttime and put on this little show. And so I just I did a lap around the park, which if you've ever been to Busch Gardens Williamsburg, is no easy feat because there's a lot of hills and it's a lot of walking. but kind of like Busch Gardens Tampa. But it was cool to see the scare zones, and then I met a bunch of viewers from the channel, and they, the scare zones are varying degrees of quality. I will say the returning scare zones actually are more impressive as far as props than the newer ones. Garden of the Souls and Fool's Court were more like themed areas with a couple of props and themed actors than they were anything that had like larger props. But Axe Alley, which is returning from last year, Sideshow Square, another returning scare zone, those have kind of larger props, like at the center or in the entrance. In fact, I'd say out of all of them, Axe Alley was probably the most impressive scare zone as it relates to props. But I'm looking forward to going back. Not to plug my channel, but to plug my channel on YouTube. I'll be back later on this week. They're gonna for the first time this year. I'm gonna be able to go and show inside one of the houses, and I think it'll be the Vault 20 house. So make sure to hit up YouTube, the IOM Geek channel on YouTube for that, and I will probably be back later in the season too. I'm enjoying this year. It's I think just like any other park, you can see some of the budget cuts and some of the trims that have had to be made this year to make the events happen. But I think they're really trying hard to do a good job there.
So it's funny when you say you're going to be able to film in one of the houses, because I believe like they did the Scream Cam or whatever for the media night at Busch Gardens Tampa, and we missed it because we were at Scream-a-geddon the night that the media stuff was happening for Busch Gardens. But it seems like they've almost given up, because I've seen countless videos of people filming things. I no longer even noticed it on the signs at Busch Gardens Tampa that you weren't allowed to film in the houses. So I'm wondering if that's a thing anymore for Busch Gardens in general.
I don't know. I looked at the signs, and they don't explicitly say video. They say no flash photography or something, but it doesn't explicitly call out video. But I don't know. I just kind of assume. And I don't want to be the guy who gets kicked out of the house or told not to. So I'm just going to assume that I can't film in the house.
Just don't go hang a banner up in the middle of the maze.
Or I think at Horror Nights now they've added a bullet point like no carrying babies through the mazes or something like that.
Oh, really?
Which is amazing that they had to do something like that. Yeah.
I mean, there were plenty of babies at Howl-O-Scream. I mean, people, with the now, please understand, I don't have any young children. I don't have any children, but I think with the pouch they wear on the front that the baby rides in.
Oh, those things.
Yeah, I mean, I saw people walking through houses with those.
Yeah. So I looked at your video. I'm gonna plug your channel in your video, but I have to say that as a reminder for the general public that's listening to this, Howl-O-Scream at Busch Gardens Williamsburg is a free event. Everything is included with your ticket to the park. It is not the same for Busch Gardens Tampa, and although this year they had these ridiculous price blowouts of starting prices for pass holders for early bird was like $20, then it was like $30 for the general population, etc. Tickets are still incredibly cheap. I think that they're in Tampa, they're doing like $60 for the kind of the whole season type of thing. I could be wrong on that price, but it's stupid cheap compared to what the big competitor with Horror Nights is charging. Yeah. But having said that, I think that what I saw in your video was 10 times better than what I saw in person at Howl-O-Scream in Tampa. And I'm anxious to go back to Tampa because I'm not sure if it was just a one night type of thing. But I mean, the scare zones in Tampa, and we made it out there on Saturday night. They do have themes, and there's new stuff out there. So they have the Diaz de las Muertes scare zone, and I'm probably butchering that, which looks nice, but it's basically kind of like the Coco scare zone. And I know you guys have that in Virginia, but they've called it the Gardens of the Soul. It would be interesting to compare both to each other, but it's basically, kind of like people in sugar skull type masks, and no one's scaring a single person there. It's meant to be kind of like a more traditional tribute to the Day of the Dead, and they're basically bowing and welcoming you to look at their family photographs that they have up and things like that. So it was very odd to see that scare zone. When I go to Busch Gardens, like historically, I've gone for the scare zones to have the crap scared out of me, and the scares are all over the place usually. This time around, there were far fewer roamers and more set scare zones. The best being, I think, Meat Market, which led into the new house, Simon Slaughterhouse. For those that don't know, it's kind of like a cannibalistic type thing, where they're grinding up humans to eat. They did something similar last year with that scare zone, but this time, they did the house to marry up to it instead of the game show house that they had in that area last year and the 3D clown house in prior years. But they kind of gimmick it up to say, it's 17 plus recommended, and it's really gory and scary, and the scare zone was fun. There was a lot of cool looking actors, kind of Leatherfacey type people, with they look like skin masks of other people, and even the concession stand was kind of themed, where you have like turkey legs or things like that, and there's pieces of like hanging meat that you have to navigate through while you're waiting online. But then you go to these other scare zones, and tonight, to do some show prep before we started talking, I actually looked at like what the names were. I mean, when you're walking through these zones, you'd have no idea what the names are in these things for the most part. I mean, there's a Deadly Toys one that I guess it's toys, but if you remember from prior years, they had like the people wearing like bear masks, like teddy bear type masks, evil bears, like just wandering in different places. And now they've kind of like corralled all of those random wanderers into this one zone for Deadly Toys, but a lot of the same stuff used over from prior years in that zone. Camp DOA was another scare zone that's new. I didn't really know what was going on in Camp DOA. For the most part, there were a lot of actors standing on the sides of the road and not necessarily coming out. There was a guy that distinctly looked like Mick Foley from the WWE that was in that scare zone. And we did film him. So eventually we'll have a video up for that on the Cheap Seats channel. But there was the website says that there's a scare zone called Hell on Wheels. I don't remember seeing that whatsoever in the park. I think in prior years, the scare zones were much better in Busch Gardens, Tampa at least. I was really kind of let down compared to what it's been in prior years. And I think a lot of it may be because of the budget that they had this year versus last year or the prior years. I didn't see any actors on rides. That's one of their big selling points, is that if you go on the different rides, they'll have scare actors on the rides. And our group went on multiple rides and didn't see any. And the Fiend show was hands down the worst show that we've seen to date. I'm not trying to be overly negative, but wow, compared to prior years or, the show kind of keeping pace with Bill and Ted, it really was not so hot. House-wise, for Busch Gardens Tampa this year, you get 6 houses. So they've eliminated a couple of houses. We shipped Demented Dimensions up to Williamsburg. And I think that's probably because they're looking to build over in that area. But we have a new house called Insomnia, which was easily one of the top 2 houses of the event this year. There's a lot of cool stuff that's going on in there for a very, what I'm imagining, a very limited budget. There's a sheep that has like razor sharp teeth. That's kind of like the MVP of that house. Really, really cool house. Simon Slaughterhouse is another new house, and that's the one that leads in from that cannibal type zone. And it's a fun house. It's another thing that they've said this is 17 plus suggested, and it kind of reminds me back to like the William Castle type movies. Like if you're so scared, we're going to get an insurance policy and take it out on you, for the showing. But it's mostly grindcore type stuff with humans being ground up into like meat. Kind of reminded me of like the old Mama's Basement or the basement that they used to have at Howl-O-Scream Tampa. Except I think that house may have been more effective than Simon Slaughterhouse. The other houses that were top notch as usual were Deathwater Bayou, probably the top of the list, which is either good or bad, considering that Deathwater Bayou's been there for many years now. But amazing house. When we tried to do that house when we first got to the park on Saturday, they had some type of operational issues. So, and very, very bad communication with house ops and people outside to say like what the expected wait time would be and things like that. But we gave up after waiting 45 minutes and with no word on what was happening with the house. Motel Hell, awesome as always. And then we had Unearthed, and Unearthed has gone from a house that I thought was amazing a couple of years ago when they had the actual icon, in the house, to slowly getting getting worse to this year. They reversed the course of that house, so you enter through the exit and exit through the entrance, if that makes sense. They gave you flashlights that have kind of like a gimmick light to it, so sometimes it blinks as you're going through in different places. I think it's triggered probably by locations in the house. Very, very foggy. Not the greatest experience through Unearthed this year. And then the Black Spot, just genuinely awful. I don't understand how the Black Spot continues to exist as a house at Howl-O-Scream. And I saw some people that were going with the Express Pass like we had, which front of the line, they just basically punch your card 6 times. So I didn't understand that you could actually just use that 6 times on the best house and not go to all of the houses. But a lot of people skipped Black Spot and they just did like Insomnia multiple times. So Busch Gardens, it's hit or miss. It's near and dear to my heart. I love that event. I think that it needs a cash infusion. It pulls in a ton of people. The park was packed on Saturday, absolutely packed for as big of a park as it is. If you've been to Busch Gardens Tampa, there's no reason that it shouldn't be able to compete on a much higher level or better level with Halloween Horror Nights than it did this year. It looks like this year they just kind of put up the white flag a little bit and didn't give their full effort to what could be. And I'm totally not hating on that on the event at all. So please don't take comments that way. But I'm anxious to get back and maybe see a little bit more details and maybe some things that I missed. And I'm sure like as the operation, as the weeks go on, the operations will get better. I think that they were struggling this first weekend, and it kind of showed a bit.
You mentioned shows, and I forgot to mention, I did see one of the shows at Williamsburg. We have a Fiends show also, which I heard went through some changes this year, and honestly, for our show, it's mostly the same year over year, so I didn't bother with it. But I did see they have a Monster Stomp on Ripper Row, which is a Jack the Ripper themed like musical show, but also incorporates elements of Stomp with using coffins and knives to make, instruments and stuff like that. And, the show started and I was like, they're singing Evanescence. Like it seems a little outdated, but then they made a number of changes to the last half of the show. And it's kind of like this everything in the kitchen sink show. So you've got a certain portion of it that's got like the blacklight skeleton dancing, and then you've got the Stomp stuff. And for me, I when the show kind of turned more towards that element, I really enjoyed it. So that was cool. And you mentioned the monsters riding the rides with you. Supposedly that happens in Busch Gardens Williamsburg too. I didn't actually even try because I forgot. So I'm sure they do it, but I certainly haven't experienced it. And they also have something called the Control Lab, which I haven't tried yet, but they say allows you to control scares in one of the houses, or maybe something along those lines, like maybe remote controlled scares. I'll know a little bit more about that later in the season, and we'll fill you guys in on a future episode of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm anxious to get back. It's unfortunate, like Joey didn't make it out there this time around, and I'd like to get another person's input on it. I think as far as like the Cheap Seats fam, we kind of felt the same across the board. it could be so much better. And it genuinely in the past has been so much scarier, and it just didn't click this time around, I think, for me. I mean, I will say, like, the prices are drastically different than what they are at Horror Nights, right? So I'm looking on their website now, and it looks like, at least for next weekend, the prices are like $40 to get in, and then it goes up to $45. It's pretty cheap, but for the level that they're doing compared to what I'm seeing out of Busch Gardens Williamsburg, you might as well make it a free event, because it looks like you're getting the same thing from both places. It's baffling to me how the price structure works.
Yeah, the Busch Gardens Williamsburg, which you mentioned earlier, it's nice because if you have an annual pass or if you just buy a day pass to the park, it's just included in the price. There's no upcharge for the houses. They do have certain upcharge things like the escape rooms, but when it just basically converts over at 6:00 after the opening ceremonies, and then you can. So if you roll into the park at 10 or noon or whenever they open, you can stay all the way till closing, and it's the same price. And I'm not a shill for Busch Gardens Williamsburg, but I am aware that it's a good deal, genuinely. But one thing that you guys were both able to get to this weekend was Scream-a-geddon.
Yes,
we did. Not together, though. We went separate days. They couldn't handle both of us at the same time.
Oh, well, you went. What? You went the night before I did.
Yeah, we went Friday night, which was their opening night. And I tell you, I looked forward to Scream-a-geddon at this point as much as, if not more, than opening weekend of Horror Nights. And I think Horror Nights I look forward to because of the friends and hanging out. And Scream-a-geddon, I look forward to because, you're in for a treat if you like to be scared. It's genuinely scary.
It's good. Yeah, I actually I liked it a lot. It had one. I mean, not every crayon can be the brightest, but there was one maze in particular. I think all of us, me, my wife, my father-in-law, were just like, okay, this is probably the weakest link, and probably get rid of it for next year. But everything else was like amazing.
Yeah, let's talk about the new stuff. So, new this year, 2 new mazes. One was Rage 3D, which is a 3D maze with clowns. They've had a 3D maze with clowns there before in the same location, actually, but different house than what it's been in the past. And then we also had Demon's Revenge, which is a brand new house that they somehow managed to squeeze in between 2 existing entities. And then they have an upcharge experience, I don't want to say house, which is the zombie paintball assault. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Rage 3D, what'd you think about that?
I liked it. It seemed very, there's similar things going on from last year, but that's not bad at all because it's good. It's got some cool effects. The 3D works. And the last, I don't want to give it away, but the last room is, if you hate clowns, you're going to hate it.
Yeah, there were we went through that house twice. We went last weekend, and it was not like on Friday night. It was not very crowded. So, and we bought the express in advance of going, and we used the express the first time around, and then with some of the things not having lines, we were able to do some attractions more than once. The Rage 3D one, when we went through the second time, we got paired up with 2 women. And by the way, here's the biggest thing that you need to know about Scream-a-geddon. Not only is it a million times scarier than like a Horror Nights type of thing, a couple things. One is you're pulsed in very small groups. So most of the houses, you're in a group of like 2 to 4 to 6 people max in your group that are going through each of the attractions at one time. And 2 of the attractions, you can opt in with a glow necklace to be touched or manhandled while you're going through the mazes. Mm-hmm. But Rage 3D, the second time that we went through, Mary and I got grouped up with 2 other women that were in front of us. And I have never seen somebody scared as much as I've seen these people scared. When we got up to the last corridor where, there was a clown that literally was sitting down and kind of crab walked, kind of like a Bray Wyatt, to these guys or these women that were in front of us. They screamed so loud and ran backwards, they knocked us all into one of the boo holes behind us. We all fell on the floor because they were so scared. It can be petrifying, and it's dark. When you think dark, it's dark. There's no well-lit areas to see what's going on.
We went on it twice, and actually we were the last 3 to go through it at the end of the night, and it didn't click right away, but say about 3 minutes in, I started realizing, since we were the last ones, and they knew it, they all started leaving their posts, and there's just a giant conga line behind us of clowns as we're going through it. I'm like, this is weird, because it just kept getting, like, the more I turn around and look, they're just, like, dancing and looking at me and jumping up and down, and I was like, oh, this is different. And especially when we got to that last room, I was like, I just gotta get out of here. But it's... I don't know if that's not my number one, but it's definitely
that's not the number one house thing. Yeah, I mean that's not even the best that they have, but it's
effective.
It's effective and it's scary. That last room, between the 3D and the trying to navigate your way out of it, and the between the stuff that's in there and the actors that are kind of attacking you, it's a lot. It's good. What was your favorite one?
My favorite was actually one of my least favorites last year, which makes no sense. But all of us agreed that Deadwoods was number one that night.
Wow.
Yeah.
I spoke to the management while I was there, and Deadwoods, in addition to Blackpool, they really amped up this year. So Deadwoods, they have some newer actors that were in there. When we went on Friday, some of the pathway lighting was not all working all that well either. So it was as dark as you could get it. For those that don't know, Deadwoods, you're essentially walking through a pitch black trail in a forest in Florida. There's hardly any lights, and you're going every so often getting stopped into like these little shacks with cannibals that are in those shacks that are waiting for you.
And Man is Busch.
Man is Busch. 2 of them.
Or Men is Busch, yeah.
Yeah.
You will not see them.
No.
It's ridiculous. They were probably the scariest thing I've seen. But then, just going through like each house. I mean, I remember last year we went through it and I was like, this isn't my number one. But this year we went through it. We went through that one twice. And both times we were like, all right, number one. It's just, it works.
So they also have Demon's Revenge this year, which is brand new, and it's basically kind of like a house of like witchcraft and black magic, and built in between Infected Ground Zero. So they took some of their real estate out, and Dead Woods. That house was so terrifying that Jess, at one point, who was leading our pack, asked Mary to switch out and for her to go in front because she couldn't keep walking in the path. We went in just 3 at a time, and it's the 3 of you against every actor in the house. And there's one room, and I don't want to give too many spoilers out, but done with mirrors, and there's probably like a good 30 plus mannequin type looking people. That unlike Horror Nights, there's not a giant soundtrack blaring in your ears and people slamming stuff together. You went through this area that you didn't know which way you needed to walk, and you could be bumping into an actor or to a mannequin. And instead of the mannequins jumping out and scaring you, which I think you were expecting if you're going to traditional haunted houses, they just whispered like, "You're never gonna make it," and things like that. And oh my God. Yeah, it was something else. They have a couple of giant puppets in that house. When you make it outside the house and you think it's over, it's not over. It was to me, I was like, holy yes. If I could go back and do that house again and again and again, I would do it. And the problem is that as the season goes on, there's definitely going to be a line for that that'll be sizable because they pulse you in. But wow.
Yeah, when we did that, I mean, because we had the front of the line, but when we first got there, we pretty much cranked everything out without a line. Because even though they don't look long, they still kind of are because they take forever to go through. But that one they repurposed a lot of stuff from the hayride that's no longer there, but it works so well. Like, especially a guy on a zip line and the puppets. I mean, they're one of my favorite parts from the hayride, which was like, 10, 15 feet away from you. Now is like 10, 15 inches away from you. So it's scary. It's very close quarters. I mean, we're talking like narrow hallways. That was our definitely number 2 on the list, and it's kind of like if they get rid of the one right next to it finally, and just take it out back. And just start building more.
You're talking about Infected. So if we went from Infected, I think was there the first 2 years, and then last year it went to Infected Ground Zero, and now it's Infected Ground Zero again, but it's a little bit smaller outside area at least. I think last year they had more like chainsaw type people like chasing you around through a maze on the outside when you exited, and they kind of shortened that up to make room for Demon's Revenge. We had a good run through in Infected Ground Zero. Same, but it's just, for me, I think probably the same as you. Like if you've been there multiple times, it was very similar to what it was in the past.
Yeah, it didn't have any of the pyro going. Actually, I mean,
that's right.
Funny story about the pyro. You probably didn't see one of the special effects. Like I didn't see it either, but it's there in the new one. The girl on the bed with the priest, kind of like The Exorcist.
Mm-hmm.
So when we were in line for the zombie paintball, one of the guys that was working on all the mazes, he was with us and he was telling us about everything. I guess one of the effects that's in that room, the bed actually reverses or goes into the wall, and she's on one side of it. So when the lights go off, you don't see her, and then you do. But they can't get it right because of the torque, and it'll basically how fast it turns now. It'll like rip arms off if you're not ready. So, but I want to see that effect because that room's cool too.
Yeah, I want to spend time just walking through everything very, very slow. But the last house, I guess we'd say, before we get to Zombie Paintball, was Blackpool Prison, returned this year. When we were going into the house, we were talking to the house ops, and the guy's like, "I coming back again for another visit." I just want to give you the heads up that if you thought it's been scary in the past, wait till you go through this year because we've got some big boys in there now. And Blackpool Prison, like Infected Ground Zero, is one of those houses that you can wear the glow necklace and they can manhandle you. And they will manhandle you. We got separated. That's the other thing, too. So you're in a very small group. But I think the first to go was Mary, and then next was Jess. And then, everybody has like their own adventure as you go through that house. And the last couple of guys that they had in that house were big boys, and they let you know it before you were getting out. So in the video that we posted from there, they let us film our reactions as we were going through for the most part. And it was not a tremendously humid night or hot night, but I sweat through my clothes when we were going through Blackpool because it's that nerve-wracking. It's not a traditional thing that I think you would think of horror. It's not a slasher type thing, but it is really, really nerve-wracking going through.
It's basically like watching Scared Straight live.
Yeah. Yep.
It's funny because we went through that first. There was no line for that one. The Saturday night we went, nobody was going on that. So we went on that first, and they were like, "Oh, put the glow sticks on." And I think the three of us were like, "Nah, we're good." So we kind of just walked through it, and we're like, "Okay." And then I know you're talking about towards the end, the guy in front called him the tank. He's a tank, and we're like, "Okay." So then the manager outside's telling us there's like a lot of hearsay going around about everyone getting their butts kicked inside or beat up, and he goes, "I've had several talks, and in fact, I'll give him credit. He was constantly going in and observing how they were, but we put the necklaces on. We went from there to the infected one. I was like, yeah, let's put on the glow sticks. These two girls kicked my ass. Like, they just kept grabbing me, like throwing me against walls and like screaming in my face where I was like, okay, cool. So when we finally did do the glow sticks for the prison one again, they were so gentle and nice. It was like, I'm just like, one guy kind of like puts his arm, like pushes me against the wall. He's like, "What are you in for?" And I'm just laughing. He's like, "What's so funny?" And I'm like, "I don't know. The girl across the way is tougher than you." But I think the highlight for me was, well, two of them. So I put on the glow stick. My wife didn't. So they don't really, they weren't messing with her. And the one guy pulls me in the cell and then shuts the door. And he's like, "You're in here with me." And my wife just looks at me kind of funny. And I'm kind of like, I just shout out like, "Yeah, I'm somebody's B word." And then there's just like silence in the whole room. The guy just looks at me like disgusted, opens the cells, and kicks me out. So then we exit that. And, well, actually, yeah, so I got split up. So the other two are on their merry way. I finally go out. I take off the glow stick, and I'm looking around. I'm like, where's everybody I came with? And there's no line. And the guy at the front goes, "Oh, yeah, she went back in with a glow stick this time." And then I'm calling BS. Like, there's no way in hell that happened. It happened. So she went through the whole thing by herself with a glow stick. Just came out, like, grinning ear to ear. So if you're second guessing it, I'm just going to tell you right now. I mean, you could vouch for this. Like, Christiana's like the biggest sissy Mary when it comes to that sort of thing. She came out like just, "Oh, it was so much fun. They're so nice in there." So it's like the nicest prison you'll ever be in.
The last thing that we did, and I'm not sure, did you do the zombie paintball assault also?
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah, so we did that first when we got to the Scream-a-geddon site. Zombie paintball assault is new this year. So as Joey mentioned earlier, they removed the hayride this year. The first thing that we did when we got to Scream-a-geddon, we talked to some of the folks from management, and they kind of ask you, like, what are you looking forward to doing? And we said, we were looking for at the new stuff. Intrigued about the paintball thing, to see what they were doing. Because in the past years, they've done paintball at Scream-a-geddon, but it's basically been in their kind of carnival midway where, they just have like one or two zombies kind of behind some cans, and, they come out and you shoot them with the paintballs. This time around, completely different. So they did take out the hayride, which was, one of our favorite things, but I think they replaced it with something that we'll come to love even more than the hayride, in that you get on this modified school bus. They've gutted out the seats in the inside, and they put two long benches, one that you sit on while you're being transported from site to site, and then the other bench sitting where you have paintball guns facing outward out of the bus. And the bus has like, crazy lights. Of course, we had to compare it to the Fast and Furious buses at Universal. It was a ready-made diversion.
Diversion.
And you get to these sites, and these poor zombies are walking out, and there's like 16 people facing out, and everybody just unloads their guns. And you have a commander on the bus that's basically telling you, like, "Line them up," and like screaming at you, like, "Shoot the head. We want to see you shoot the head." And oh my goodness, these guys get pummeled with paintballs. And if you've ever been shot with a paintball, like, those things hurt like hell. And, it's almost like they've got like sumo suits on or something to kind of deflect some of the pain from being shot. But oh my goodness, I can't remember having more fun at a haunted thing than, it's like maybe last year when we went to the haunted Anheuser-Busch thing up in Jacksonville and did the laser tag with the zombies. I mean, this time you're having a satisfaction of you're seeing a paintball launch out of your gun and splattering on people. Holy cow. I could do that every day. What an incredible stress relief.
I felt bad shooting. I mean, well, they basically they come out at an angle, and their main objective is to get to safety. There's these barrels and kind of little forts separating the bus and them. So once they get behind there, I mean, they're just taking cover. If you look at the right direction, you can actually see them like covering their heads. And it's just so sad to see them still get shot at when they're down, but it's also entertaining. I feel like there's a couple times I'm like, all right, so there's two, and then there's like two, and I'm like, I wonder if it's the same two guys that just keep going from like set to set in a circle, just getting shot at.
I don't think that it is. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe somebody could tell us if they're listening. We had at least one of the zombies check in on the video that we shot there. And if you guys are interested in seeing like what it actually looks like, we did include footage in the video that we shot there for the cheap seats. But wow, you do have to pay extra for the paintball. So, they have a package with like 100 paintballs is $10, and 200 paintballs is 15, and then 300 is 20. But
don't go over 200.
yeah, I think like, we did the 200 and they came around and refilled us like halfway through.
Yep. We did 300 and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to use all these.
Yeah, after the first couple of guys, I was like, when we came to the fill up part, that people were like, you barely shot anything, and I was like, well, I was shooting more for precision, and they were like, don't do that, just shoot people like crazy.
Yeah, I'd say, if they keep that up, I would say just go for the 100. I mean, they will fill you. It's not like they have a little tin that says 100, 200, 300. They have a thermos, like a Gatorade thermos, full of these little glow-in-the-dark paintballs, and they just keep scooping them in guns. I mean, and then they come through halfway through and kind of I think it's the last section, they refill you up.
Yeah.
So it's worth, it's worth the $10. If you're going to get the 100 balls, it's worth the $10 easily.
Yeah. I would do the 200 again myself. I mean, I want to do it again. I actually, for people coming from Orlando, in case you're curious, to get to Scream-a-geddon, it's a little difficult to get to because it's kind of smack dab in the middle of the state. But I will say, this time around, we kind of made a Tampa trip this past weekend, and we stayed at a place across from Busch Gardens, and from Busch Gardens to Scream-a-geddon was 30 minutes or less. Very, very easy to get to. You basically taking like 275 or 75 or 275, like getting off, and it's like right there. So it was incredibly easy to get to compared to going from Orlando. But I love Scream-a-geddon. I couldn't love it anymore. The people that work at Scream-a-geddon are incredibly nice. It's more of a homey type place, small haunt. The place is genuinely scary. It's as scary as you want to make it. So if it's not scary enough for you, you can put on those glow necklaces. It's going to be even scarier. And you're out in the middle of nowhere if that doesn't scare you enough. I like it so much that when we were out there for the cheap seats and the four Hauntsmen, I spoke to them and asked them if they wanted to have us help promote them a little bit, kind of share the love. So we have 2 pairs of general admission tickets that we can give out to a couple of lucky fans or listeners of the show. And what we want you to do in order to try to win these tickets, you need to follow the Four Hauntsmen on Twitter, and we'll give you the Twitter handle. I think it's at the Four Hauntsmen or
at Four Hauntsmen.
So at Four Hauntsmen, FOURHAUNTSMEN. So follow the Four Hauntsmen on Twitter and tweet to us hashtag I wanna scream 4H, and we'll tweet to ourselves, or when we put up the podcast this week, we'll put that hashtag up there so that you guys can copy it and send it back to us. And we'll choose 2 winners on Monday. And essentially what you'll be winning is 2 general admission promo codes that you can enter at their checkout. And I think you probably need to check out singularly for each of these tickets. But they'll get you 1 general admission ticket into Scream-a-geddon. It's not going to get you the front of the line express or VIP type ticket. It doesn't get you the parking price, and it doesn't get you the paintball piece. But it gets you in the door so that you can see the awesomeness that is Scream-a-geddon. And as far as trying to open this up to, people always complain like, this isn't open for me and I live overseas, or I live here, or I do this. This is open to whoever wants to enter the contest. But please, if you are entering to win these tickets, make sure that you can use these tickets. Don't enter to win just to say that you won something. We want to make sure that people go out to actually experience Scream-a-geddon. If you just want to tweet us and say hello, you can do that at any time, and we'll interact with you and respond back with any questions or anything that you have. But we do want to make sure that you can use the tickets, so that if you are located somewhere that you can't get to Scream-a-geddon before the end of the season, please don't win the try to win the tickets and knock somebody out of contention that can actually make it over there. think that's fair. We're just trying to be fair.
Yeah. So just one final reminder, that's at 4Hauntsmen on Twitter. Hashtag I wanna scream 4H. And again, it'll be on Twitter, but in case you don't already follow us on Twitter, you have to follow us on Twitter to be eligible for this contest.
Yeah, and we will pick 2 winners on Monday, October 1st, and notify you via direct message on Twitter, and we'll give you 2 of those codes so that you can use them to check out.
So you actually have 4 total.
No. We have 4 codes to give out. Yeah, but
so 2 sets of 2.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay.
And I think you can only use the code for 1 time in each of your transactions, so you got to do 2 transactions if 2 of you are going. So if you're husband and wife, you buy tickets twice. Or
that's a lot of work.
Husband or wife and wife or whatever, friends and friends. So in any event, that's it for Scream-a-geddon. We could circle back here in a quick wrap up with some thoughts on Halloween Horror Nights Week 2. Joey and I went over to Horror Nights. I guess it might still technically be Week 1. It wasn't opening weekend, but we went to Horror Nights on Thursday after everybody was gleefully tweeting and letting the world know that on Wednesday the crowds were super light, which I attribute to the fact that Wednesday was not a planned night for Horror Nights initially. It was an add-on night, so they added 2 nights in through the event, and Wednesday was one of them, so I don't think most folks even knew that the park was open, and we didn't go. Instead, we went on Thursday, which was the opposite of light. It was very busy. What did you think about Week 2, Joseph?
I still thought it was less. I mean, well, the night we went was still less crowded than the opening weekend. Poltergeist is still number 1, followed closely by Slaughter Cinema, and I'm still gonna give Scary Tales number 3, even though we didn't go in it. That was my fault. I got very tired. Yeah.
We at some point, at least for the Cheap Seats channel, we got to do a ranking of the houses. But as a 4Hauntsman, we'll wait for Paul to come down in a couple weeks, and we'll rank the houses from that point. But I don't think it was as busy as opening weekend, but it certainly was still fairly busy. They've continued to add other props to things as the event's gone on, like they do every year. So we missed something on Thursday that was introduced, I think, on Friday in the Chucky zone with kind of like a human operation type game. We spent time in the clown zone, and it was fun watching the clowns kind of interact with people. We saw clowns ironically interacting with babies. I mean, literally babies that looked like they were like less than 6 months old in the clown zone when we were there. The houses, I think we did 7 of them on Thursday. Poltergeist still heads and tails above the rest as far as IPs go, and the original properties, Slaughter Cinema, I think, is still knocking the ball out of the park. I will say, like, Dead Exposure knocked down a bunch of pegs for me. Went through on Thursday. Nowhere near as effective as what it was on opening night or the following night. But overall, it's a good time. I think it's interesting, when you get to, Halloween Horror Nights and then you look at other haunts again and kind of stack them up together. And I always go back to the same thing again. Horror Nights is very slick and well produced and put out. It's very shiny. It's like, it's the BMW of haunt events. And then, these other things like Scream-a-geddon or even Howl-O-Scream, so much scarier and just not as slick and not as shiny. It's not the Kia Soul, but it's it's kind of like a late model Dodge Dart or something that's gonna kick your ass. With scares compared to Horror Nights. I don't think we had a couple of moments in the houses that I think got us. I got scared, I think, initially in Slaughter Cinema, only from the very, very front of that house, the guy on the left as you're going in, because I was infatuated with looking at a napkin box of all things that was on the shelf. And then I saw you get kind of startled with one of the supposed dead bodies in Trick or Treat.
Oh, the one without a head, or it's like a
that's kind of sad. Yeah, but
yeah, everybody gets one.
But it's a fun event. We'll be back this week, I'm sure. Check it out some more.
Well,
good, Paul. I'm
well,
sorry.
I was going to say, as we wrap up, obviously more Halloween Horror Nights in our future. But what else do you have on deck?
For us, we're trying to work out for cheap seats. We're trying to work out to go down to see Enigma in South Florida. I think it's in Boca Raton on Saturday. And I think we're at that point now where if we have things to run, family errand wise, I'm looking to see like what's around that we can try to hit at the same time also. And Enigma might fit that bill on Saturday. And I think the following week is when we're going to head out to Atlanta and look at Netherworld and Six Flags. Six Flags, by the way, super confusing on their site as far as like what's included in Fright Fest versus haunted houses. And we bought the passes this year thinking that would be awesome because Fright Fest is included, and apparently Fright Fest is just scare zones and it doesn't include the houses. If you want to go to the houses, it's actually another $50. So anyway, that's what's coming up next week. And you?
Well, for me, I have, like I said, Busch Gardens Howl-O-Scream. I've got at least 2 more visits there. And in addition, I will be at Six Flags Fright Fest, I think this Friday evening, for a special media thing. But I also want to say that for anyone who listens to this podcast, and this is not a paid endorsement or anything like that, because none of us have seen the film yet, but I'm excited for Hellfest, which is coming out this week in movie theaters, which was filmed at a Six Flags Fright Fest, and also has been incorporated into a couple of the Six Flags events, I think in New Jersey and California. It is, if you're not familiar with it, it's a horror movie that's about a slasher inside one of these theme park haunted attractions. So I'm really looking forward to checking that one out.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I think on that note, we just want to take one more chance to remind you of the Scream-a-geddon contest. 2 pairs of tickets. You just need to follow us at 4Hauntsmen on Twitter. Tweet to us, #IWannaScream4H. If you follow us on 4Hauntsmen, we will use the hashtag so you're aware of it. We're going to pick 2 winners on Monday, October 1st. So not a wide window because we want to make sure that folks can use these tickets.
Exactly. Yes. Joseph, anything in the future for you?
I got, end of the month, I got Warner Brothers Horror Made here. And, because I'll be in LA. Not going to Hollywood Horror Nights, although their wait time signs might entice me to do it.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was. And other than that, I'm just going to try and, if anybody doesn't know, I'm award-winning artist Joseph Manella, 3rd place. So with that, I'm going to try to finish up painting some more monsters. But if you see my stuff and you want one and you're interested, I am doing commissions. I just did a bunch of 3 killer clowns. And let's just say the producer of the sculpts for the 1-to-1 scale Universal monsters, he might be having a sale in a couple of weeks. So if anybody wants to jump on one of those and have it professionally painted by a 3rd place artist like myself, come find me.
And you'll be able to get to Joey's Twitter via @4Hauntsmen as well.
Sure.
Well, we'll link you, Joey.
I'm.
All right, guys.
We'll do it live.
Do it live.
And on that note, I think that's a wrap.
I think that's it. We went a little bit longer today, but man, it's hard not to gush about some things.
Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.
All right, thanks everybody.